Welcome everyone, and thank you for venturing out on what is less than ideal conditions in Northern Ohio. My name is Matt Nacon, and I'm going to be the moderator of tonight's Candidates Night. I am the president of Wickens, Herzog, Kansa, the oldest law firm in the county. People like it when I say that a lot more than the largest law firm in the county, and a member of the Lorain County Bar Association. Tonight we have the chance to learn more about the candidates that are going to be running for judicial and prosecutorial seats that impact Lorain County. We will be asking the candidates questions that have been submitted anonymously by the Bar Association membership and vetted by a committee in charge of tonight's event. If you don't like a question, I didn't write it. A few ground rules. We're going to proceed with candidates for each office collectively, meaning that all candidates for each office will be on stage to respond to questions, starting with the domestic relations seat, followed by the proceeding to the general division, then the Court of Appeals, and finishing with the Lorain County prosecutor. With the general division candidates, we're going to separate the 5 candidates on stage by the specific seat that they are seeking. Not that anyone here needs to be reminded of this, but the expectation is that everyone will behave as if they are in a courtroom. This event has a history of being a very professional debate, and we want to keep it that way. It's not often that I get control over the judiciary, so I'm going to do my best not to let the power go to my head. To the audience, please, no cheering, no booing, no whistling, and no applause until each set is done for the evening. Where we have multiple candidates for the same office, the candidates are going to be seated on stage alphabetically from right to left, and each candidate is going to be given 1 minute for opening and closing remarks, with the caveat that such remarks are to be limited to their own candidacy and not directed at their opponents. We expect this condition to be followed, and if it isn't, we expect our audience to take notice of any candidate that's breached the rules. Each candidate will also be granted 1.5 minutes to respond to questions posed to them. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from most of the following candidates. In the domestic relations division candidates, Anthony Hurst is running against Judge Frank Janik, and Mr. Hurst is not here this evening, and he was not able to attend. So Judge Janik will be going solo. In the general division, the judicial candidates are first running for Judge John Wiraldi's seat are Matthew Grabowski, Donna Freeman, and Richard Ramsey, and running for the seat currently held by Judge James Wiraldi is Daniel Petticourt and Giovanni Scaletta-Bremke. We will have all 5 of these candidates seated on the stage together, but separated again by the seat they are pursuing. With the 9th District Court of Appeals, we have with us tonight Judge Jennifer Hensel, and she is running against Stephen Elliott, who could not be here tonight. So we will be hearing only from Judge Hensel. And for the Lorain County prosecutor, we have Anthony Sillo and J.D. Tomlinson, our current prosecutor, both of whom are here tonight. We are going to start with the candidates for the Domestic Relations Division, and Judge Janik, that's you. So I would just take that podium and it's all yours. So we will start each session with a 1-minute introduction by the candidate.
Before you start the meter, Jeannie, I do want to thank the Lorain County Bar Association for hosting and Attorney Nacon for moderating this candidates night. And on behalf of all the candidates, as to your format, I'm not sure it's possible for an attorney to open their mouth, start talking, and close it in 1 minute. I'm just saying, it hasn't happened in my courtroom in 12 years, including me, but I guess we'll see if that's possible tonight. Right. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Judge Frank Janik. I am your Lorain County Domestic Relations Court Judge, and I'd like to spend my opening minute talking to you about my legal experience. I graduated from the Ohio State University College of Law with honors over 33 years ago. Admittedly, that means I'm old. I began practicing civil litigation in a law firm in Columbus. I then moved back to Lorain County, where I am from, born and raised, and practiced civil litigation with Ken and Chris Rothgary in Elyria. I've been an assistant county prosecutor for the Lorain County Prosecutor's Office, prosecuting major felony crimes up to and including capital murder. I had my own law practice at Amherst and represented individuals charged with misdemeanor and felony crimes up to murder. I've taught criminal and constitutional law at the Lorain County Community College. I was active in the Lorain County Bar Association, serving on the executive board and as chair of the criminal law section. I was elected and served 2 terms as a councilman at large in the city of Amherst, and I've been elected to 2 terms as your Lorain County Domestic Relations Court judge. I'm currently in my 12th year in that position. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Jan. Do you think there should be a specialized docket for domestic violence matters and domestic violence civil protection orders?
I think the way we have the system set up now with the civil protection orders that are given first on an ex parte basis with an individual who comes to court and requests it. It is usually seen by a magistrate or judge to determine if it is a legally sound request. They are then set for a review hearing, and the respondent is invited to give the complete both sides of the story, if you will, after, and then the court decides then if the civil protection order should remain and for how long. I do think that that system, as it is today, appropriately protects people that are in need of a domestic violence civil protection order, and I think that would that it properly addresses the situation, and I don't think there would be a need for a specialized court for that now.
Thank you.
Sure.
How do you propose to deal with parents that do not pay court-ordered child support? And is the system working in that regard?
I think it is working. We address either through private contempt motions by parties who bring to the court's attention somebody is not paying child support, or through the prosecutor's office in a criminal contempt for not paying child support. And in either way, a magistrate or judge will determine if support is not being paid as ordered. There are a host of sanctions that we impose. Of course, we try to see that the person pays what they're responsible for paying, and we give them time to attempt to do that. But if not, then certainly fine or jail contempt can happen in a contempt case. And I do think that is working. I try, when I see people once a month for the criminal contempts, I do try to give them one hearing to address the contempt and the amount of support they're owed, and if they come back before me and they do not, and the prosecutor requests jail time, then I impose that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Lorain County pursuing any programs to try to reduce the number of juveniles committing crimes?
Yes, we have, in the last few years, started a assessment and resource center, which there's been studies by the Annie Casey Foundation that have gone on for decades, and they tell us that youth that are removed from their home and put in a facility, and the more they are indoctrinated into the juvenile justice system, the less likely they are to graduate, the more likely they are to recidivate, and become somebody that is in the adult criminal justice system. We have tried to set up this, develop this assessment and resource center so that when youth are presenting with delinquent behaviors, our probation department will assess the situation and attempt to connect them possibly with community resources, maybe a after-school program, counseling, or a mentor, and try to slowly, if possible, keep them away from the juvenile justice system. And we use a graduated kind of court involvement and sanctions to address juvenile delinquency.
Great. What are you most proud of and least proud of in your legal career?
Well, I guess we'll start with, as a judge, and I'll get into with my closing all the things I've been active in as a judge. But as a judge, I've developed our current seminar for separating parents. Judge Baczynski, when I took office, who had to retire because of age, kept doing the seminar because he wanted to and was interested in that, had developed it in the 90s. But eventually, the court took that over. I developed a education program for parents that are divorcing and going through dissolutions with children, as well as unmarried parents that are going through custody matters. And I try to educate them on the law so that I believe the process is less traumatic to them and to their children. We try to teach them what the effects of having a custody case and litigation can have on a child, and how to be better parents, how to better co-parent children without traumatizing them and supporting each other in the future. I'm proud of that.
Thank you. How does the court handle folks that come before you that clearly need legal counsel but clearly can't afford legal counsel? What do you do in those situations?
Okay, well, it depends. I have juvenile and domestic relations court jurisdiction. With the juvenile court, the juvenile and parent do have a right to court-appointed counsel if they can't afford it. So we, very early on in the case, have them fill out some paperwork and decide whether they need to be connected with court-appointed counsel. On the domestic side, or even the private custody side of the juvenile and domestic docket, we do refer them to the Lorain County Bar Association. They have a modest means program, and if somebody qualifies for modest means, they can get a attorney appointed through the Bar Association to represent them in domestic and custody matters. And we also have, in the last couple of years, started at the Domestic Relations Court, a public service help desk for those people that are going through the process representing themselves. Our help desk doesn't give them legal advice, but it does provide them with forms and information about the legal process. We're proud to have established that in the last 2 years and serve the public in that way.
Great. If you observe a party in your courtroom that is being poorly represented or represented by an unprepared or ineffective lawyer, how do you deal with that situation? Not that that's ever happened.
Yes. If it did happen, certainly it is not my practice and never has been, and I would hope every attorney in Lorain County or who have been before me would attest to this. I would never embarrass somebody in the courtroom. I try to respect the attorneys and the litigants and treat them fairly and compassionately when they're in court. I would, after the hearing, invite the attorney into chambers and have a discussion as to whether there's something going on personally the night before, maybe, or recently in his life, that caused them to come to court so noticeably unprepared. and see if you know, it's just an isolated incident, and certainly have a more extended conversation if it's somebody that I've noticed that happened to on multiple occasions.
Final question, what do you believe are the biggest issues facing you as a judge in Lorain County today?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say the biggest issue right now is our violent delinquents. We have seen an increase in the amount of violent juvenile delinquency charges, including kids with guns, and it's a serious problem. You have to keep the community safe, certainly in those types of situations, but as I said, the more you send children to facilities, the worse outcomes you may have. The interesting thing about the computer age and the data that we are collecting, we can work with the Ohio Department of Youth Services and the Supreme Court to actually determine where these incidents are happening, where these charges are coming from by zip code and by even down to the street or block. Most of these charges are happening. So with that information, we are hoping to help the community have resources to maybe interrupt this violence, either through an after-school program that's a safe environment, a mentorship, connecting the children in that neighborhood with mentors, anything we can do to support the community and stop that violence.
Great, thank you. Judge Janik, if you'd like to roll into your closing comments.
I will, thank you. I'll start my last minute by telling you some of the things I've done as a judge. I've been a very active and I believe hardworking judge in the last 11 years. I've served as president of the Ohio Association of Juvenile Court Judges in 2022 and 23. I was honored to be appointed by the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court to serve on the Advisory Committee on Children and Families. I currently serve on the Ohio Supreme Court's Juvenile Justice and Family Law Reform subcommittees. I've served on the Executive Committee for the Ohio Judicial Conference, which is an association for all judges in Ohio. I currently serve on the Executive Board of the Ohio Association of Domestic Relations Court Judges. I have been invited by the Supreme Court to teach newly elected judges at the New Judges Orientation and have taught other judges at judicial seminars. Here in Lorain County, I've presented over every specialized docket in the Domestic Relations Court, including the Juvenile Mental Health Court, the Juvenile Drug Court, and the Family Reunification Drug Court. I teach the seminar for separating parents to citizens of Lorain County who are going through divorce, dissolutions, and unmarried parents going through custody cases. It has truly been an honor and privilege to serve the citizens of Lorain County as judge. I will continue to do everything I can to treat families and children that come before me with fairness, compassion, and respect, and I humbly ask for your vote to be reelected. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Janik. All right, next we are going to bring up the candidates for the general division. First we'll do Judge Muraldi's seat to the podium, or to the chairs, Matthew Bobrowski, Donna Freeman, and Richard Ramsey. Followed by Mr. Petticourt and Giovanna Spalletta. Please have a seat. Mr. Bobrowski, why don't we start with you? Opening comments for 1 minute, please.
Hello, I'm Matthew Bobrowski. I've been a lifelong resident of Lorain County. I was born and raised here by a steel worker and a school teacher. I went to law school at Case Western Reserve School of Law. When I started in private practice, I largely did civil work, domestic, not so much domestic, but more so in personal injury litigation. Over time, I transitioned into appellate work and into criminal defense. That's where I've been primarily in my private practice for the last several years. I've also been an acting judge and magistrate in Lorain Municipal Court. I started that. So I do have some experience on the bench, and I decided that the next step I would take in my legal career would be running for office after having had a taste of it on the bench in Lorain Municipal Court. I thank you for your time, and I thank the Lorain County Bar Association for hosting this event.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Donna Freeman. I work for the Honorable Frank Janik as a magistrate. I've been a magistrate for 5 years. I handle the juvenile delinquency docket. I also handle private custody cases and domestic violence and juvenile protection orders. I have worked for the court system for almost 30 years. That makes me feel old also. And during that time, I've worked as an assistant prosecutor for both Ashland County and Lorain County Prosecutor's Office. I was a civil, represented the civil division in the Ashland County Prosecutor's Office. And also I was a criminal prosecutor. I represented, I was the prosecutor for the criminal adult division for a number of years and also represented children's services for a number of years. So in my 30 years, I've always worked for the court system in some judicial, prosecutorial, or legal capacity. Thank you.
Mr. Renz.
Thank you. I brought notes in case I forget who I am. My name is Richard Ramsey. I'm running for judge of the Common Pleas Court General Division. I'm a native of Amherst. I'm an Amherst boy. I graduated from Steele High School. I obtained my bachelor's degree from Capital University in Columbus, and I obtained my law degree from Cleveland State University. I've been practicing for the past 20 years. Always maintained my own private law practice, which I think that's given me a nice bit of experience because I've had the ability to work in a number of different courts, including this particular court. I've also had significant experience practicing in common pleas courts of Erie, Cuyahoga, and Huron counties. My experience is in handling general civil and criminal matters, the kinds of things that are handled in this division of the court. But I've also had experience, quite a bit of experience dealing in other divisions of the common pleas court, the juvenile, domestic, and probate divisions of basically all of those counties. In addition to my law practice, I've served as the elected treasurer of the city of Amherst for the past 10 years. I'm pretty proud of what we've accomplished there. My job is to collect the city's income tax, so please don't hold that against me. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm all done.
Daniel Petticourt.
I bet you're glad she got through right after you said the income tax part too.
That's right.
Good evening. Matt, thanks for doing this. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Dan Petticourt, and I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a lawyer in that order. My wife Jenny, who's here tonight, is a public school teacher. My son Dan and my daughter Marissa are both pursuing their doctoral degrees. I was raised in Lorain, graduating from Admiral King in 1985, so yes, I have a problem being in Hilaria High School right now, but I'll work around it. And I've lived in the county most of my life. I've been practicing law for more than 30 years, which makes me older than Donna, although you couldn't tell that, I'm sure. First as a large law firm associate in Cleveland, later on as an equity partner in a small law firm. When I was in private practice, I traveled across the country and I tried complex cases throughout the United States. I've appeared in courtrooms in probably half the states. I've tried cases to verdict in probably a dozen. I'm currently the civil chief of the prosecutor's office, and in that role, I represent all the county elected officials, our township trustees, and our board. I appreciate your attention tonight, and thanks for hosting. It's good to meet you. Thank you.
and Giovanna.
Oh, sorry. Trying to move this. Good evening. Can you hear me? I just broke it. I'm sorry. Okay, now you can hear me? Okay. Never been accused of not being able to be heard. My name is Giovanna Scaletta-Bremke. I'm also running for Judge Jim Maraldi's position. I want to thank the Bar Association, my colleagues on the Bar Association for having this debate tonight, and also Matt for hosting, or for moderating. Rather than recite my resume to you, I want to discuss what I think it takes to be a good judge and what tools you need in your toolkit. Number one, experience. I've had the practice of, and the fortune of practicing in every courtroom in Lorain County and throughout the county as both civil plaintiffs and defense lawyer and also in criminal practice. I also am a magistrate in the Elyria Municipal Court. I also think that a good judge should have integrity. I sit on the Lorain County Bar Association Ethics and Grievance Committee. I pride myself on knowing our ethics rules and following them. And I also believe that a good judge should be just and fair. Again, I have the experience of serving as a neutral magistrate already. Thank you.
Giovanna, why don't you just stay there while you're at it, and you can take our first question. How will you balance observing the newly legislated rights of victims while ensuring the constitutional rights of defendants are still protected?
Sure. So I think with the passage of Marcy's Law, now it's been several years, that it's important that we abide by that constitutional amendment. And the biggest thing is victims notification. When I'm practicing in court, various courts, you can hear the judges ask, has the victim been notified? And I think that that's imperative that a judge makes sure that that's done and that those rules are followed.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey, are you in favor of creating a commercial court like the recovery and wellness courts?
What was the second half of that question?
And are you in favor of creating a commercial court, as does Cuyahoga County, like the recovery and wellness courts are separate?
To be honest with you, I've never really given that much thought, but I suppose there could be a place for that, because when you get into those kinds of cases, I mean, those issues are very particular to that, I guess, that area, if you will. And they can be fairly complex, and I suppose that if you were to specialize in something like that, that could make a difference. So yeah, I guess roundabout way I would be in favor of that.
Ms. Freeman, do you think it is appropriate for a candidate to seek an endorsement from law enforcement? And if so, do you think that endorsement could affect the appearance of impartiality when deciding criminal cases?
Okay, so yeah. Yes, I do think it's appropriate to seek an endorsement from law enforcement. I think it's important that everyone have the same opportunity to seek that endorsement. And I think as long as everyone who's seeking that endorsement has the same opportunity to sit in front of law enforcement and discuss issues and beliefs, I don't think that it's any different from getting an endorsement from any other group. Like I said, I think as long as everyone has the same opportunity, I think it's fine to ask for an endorsement from law enforcement. And so yes, I would agree with that.
Thank you. Mr. Petticourt, how would you describe your judicial temperament?
Calm. I've been doing this for a long time. I've done it in a lot of different places. I've got a significant amount of experience. What that has done is it's taught me that situations often resolve themselves when you take time and you deliberate and you let yourself come to the right answer. I tell people who work for me now, there's always time to get to the right answer. Okay? I think that's very important on the bench. We've all been in places where decisions get made, and you can tell the judge in the middle of a trial is trying to pull it back and get away from it. I think I would be able to avoid those kinds of circumstances. I also have been in front of a lot of judges. I think I would prefer that I be a judge that treats people with respect and treats people the way that I want to be treated. And I think I would do that.
Thank you. Mr. Bobrowski, what is your trial experience? And if you do not have a wealth of experience in both civil and criminal trials, how will you address that coming onto the bench?
In terms of trial experience, I've had trial experience in both criminal and civil cases. My primary civil case load was not incredibly heavy, as many civil cases do resolve prior to trials. I have sat second chair in several civil trials and seen them to their conclusion in front of a jury. I've also done criminal trials, both in common pleas and in a municipal court level. So, but I think regardless of how much experience you have, there's always going to be a continuous learning curve. You can never expect that you know everything at any point in your legal career. And it's incumbent upon you to continually take advantage of all the legal opportunities you have to continue your legal education and be aware of how things change. You can never assume you know everything, and any judge who does is setting himself up for failure.
Thank you. Ms. Valletta-Brunke, this one's near and dear to my heart, so I didn't write it. But if elected, how do you intend to handle your civil docket, which often falls to the wayside in some courts behind criminal dockets?
Okay, very good question. I think the civil cases do fall behind, and I've had the opportunity to represent civil litigants, and I think some of us in the system believe that maybe criminal cases take priority, but I can tell you from having the experience with civil litigants that those are cases that are very important in their lives. They, this is sometimes their livelihood at stake, money, it's stress. And when those cases continue to linger on, sometimes without decisions, it's, a very stressful experience for them. So in order to address that, I think that you need an active judge. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a very hard worker, and I would take that to the bench with me. So I would work very well with my magistrate, who we know the magistrates handle a lot of the civil matters, and make sure that we are on a very good time frame on everything and address anything that's outstanding. I have the opportunity now to serve as a magistrate, although it's traffic. I've also had the opportunity to preside over civil trials as well. And we have a very high volume where I'm at, and I'm able to effectively manage that.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman, what qualifications do you possess that make you better qualified than your opponents?
Well, I can maybe get into a little bit more of my history with the court here. Like I said in my opening remarks, I do have a 30-year history working for the court system. Almost 30 years. I don't want to misrepresent it. Will be 30 years in July. And I started at Family Divorce Services. Now it's Family Court Services. Judge Janik talked about the seminar for separating parents. I actually presented that seminar with the late Judge Baczynski, and I was a mediator for the court for a lot of years. I mediated custody and visitation disputes. My experience as an assistant prosecutor includes the civil division, where I wrote over 50 formal legal civil opinions in Ashland County. It includes representing Lorain County Children's Services for a number of years, and it includes working in the adult criminal division as an assistant prosecutor for a number of years. I feel like I'm very well-rounded for the position because I have worked with so many various agencies throughout the court over the years. And I've developed a lot of professional relationships over the years with all of my peers and colleagues, and I think I've gained the respect of my colleagues and peers over the years. So I think that my 30 years of experience in many different areas of the court system prepares me well for this honorable profession.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey, what are you most proud of and least proud of in your legal career?
I suppose the thing that I get, boy, the least proud of, I'm struggling with. I suppose maybe my weakness, especially when in my younger years, was sort of my temper. The joke was I had an evil twin brother, you know, and if you got to meet my evil twin brother, then you know. But it took a lot to kind of get me there, which I think that's just with age, you know, you tend to calm down. I suppose if I had to point something out, I'm sure I lost my temper at some time in the past. As far as the thing that I'm most proud of, I think that it's sort of what gives you the greatest reward, and that maybe in the last 5 years we've done a lot more probate stuff, and when the gray-haired old ladies are coming in, and they're, you know, when they leave, they really feel like they've gotten something done. You know, you kind of really feel like you've helped somebody, and I suppose that's what we all want to do, is feel like we're helping somebody in one of these problems. But boy, you really see it whenever you do like the estate planning and stuff, and you're dealing with the elderly in that regard. So that's, I guess, what I'm most proud of.
Thank you. Mr. Petticord, how do you plan to ensure your civil docket is intended to and moves smoothly?
Civil docket moves smoothly?
Yes.
All right. Firstly, let me say that this profession is not for lazy people. And I've never met a good lawyer who's also a lazy lawyer. I will be aware of my cases. I will manage my civil docket the same way I manage my criminal docket. I will be up to date on each of the files before me. I will work closely with my staff to make sure they handle things that are appropriate at staff level. And when it's time for decisions to be made by the elected judge, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I will be prepared to, and I will make those decisions. That's how I handle my civil docket. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bobrowski, what's the reason you're running to be judge of the general division?
That's an interesting question because there's a lot of reasons why you run. When I started in law school, I remember going to court and thinking about what position I wanted to be in, where I saw myself. And from almost in my start in law school, being on the bench was something I wanted to do. But over the course of time, as I gained more and more experience, I realized that it's not always, the goal shouldn't be just the goal. You should have to work for it, and there should be a more firm reason. And really, what it came down to me was, I saw that there's a need for service. You have to serve your community, and serving your community as a judge was something I thought I had the ability to do, I have the experience to do, I have a broad base, and I think I can do the job well. So ultimately, that was why I made the choice to run for office.
Thank you. Ms. Coletta Grumke, do you support the Recovery Court and the Wellness Court? And if so, which one would you like to take over and why?
I am a huge supporter of the Recovery Court. I've been the defense attorney for the Lorain County Recovery Court since 2018. I've worked well with Judge John Moraldi. He's here tonight. He wouldn't like me to point that out. But I've worked really well in that courtroom with various prosecutors, with the judge, with probation, and with treatment. I'm a member of the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. I've also had experience with referring clients to mental health court. I think our specialized dockets are a toolkit that we need to have in our system. Not only do we operate mainly on grant funds from state and federal dollars, so we're not using the resources, the local resources, but also we're reducing recidivism. Our recidivism rate, I did some research before I came tonight, is 90% are offending on regular community control and only 20% on specialized dockets. So the recidivism, reducing recidivism, the specialized dockets are just essential to that. I intend to preside over a specialized docket if I'm elected. I would preside over either the recovery court or the mental health court. I've also had the opportunity to represent individuals in probate court on involuntary commitments, on people with guardianships and severe mental illness. So I come to the court with experience not only on the addiction end of things, but also mental health.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman, I know you have 30 years of experience with the courts. What is your trial experience? And if you do not have a lot of experience in both civil and criminal trials, how will you address that coming onto the bench?
I have a lot of trial experience as an assistant prosecutor with the Lorain County Prosecutor's Office. I was in the adult criminal division for 8 years and did, I don't even know how many trials, but it was a lot. I did a lot of jury trials, and in fact, I prided myself on trying cases that could potentially be losers because we had uncooperative victims or uncooperative witnesses. I personally would go out and find some of these witnesses and victims, and because I believed in the case and the victim believed in the case, and so I tried a lot of cases that could have been losers, but I wanted to do what was right for the alleged victim or victims, so I tried a lot of those. I also was one of the few courtroom prosecutors as an assistant prosecutor who carried a full caseload as an assistant prosecutor, but also tried some of the murder cases. And I had gone to my boss when I worked there and asked if that's something I could do. Typically, the murders were tried by the chief of the criminal division and his assistant. I tried 4 murder cases by myself while I handled a caseload because that's just something that I always wanted to do. So I had a number of jury trials. I can't even count. Also, I did not have any civil trials as an assistant prosecutor, but like I said, I did represent the civil division while I was at the Ashland County Prosecutor's Office and represented many different entities in that division, such as Board of Elections, Recorder's Office, a lot of township trustees. And so I had to learn a lot about civil law while I was in the Ashland County Prosecutor's Office because I did a lot of research and wrote a lot of opinions. So that's something I'm eager to learn.
Thank you. Mr. Petticourt, what do you feel is the biggest issue facing judges in Lorain County today?
Caseloads, I think, is a big issue. I think being able to move the dockets along is a significant challenge. I think that we are in a county that we see a lot of repeat offenders. We see a lot of people coming through the system. I think that the ability to manage a docket and to be able to make decisions in an efficient and just manner is a significant challenge to everybody on the bench right now. I think that will continue to be as our county grows. I think we're starting to see a diversity of kinds of cases be filed in Lorain County. So I think that you have to be a little bit more of a generalist than maybe you had to in the past. But I think it comes down to efficiency in managing the caseloads.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey, if you observed a party in your courtroom being poorly represented or unprepared, how would you propose to handle that situation?
I think Judge Janik kind of hit the nail right on the head, actually. I think you never want to embarrass a practitioner, on the record, and I think you never really want to, you want to do your best to not embarrass any attorney in front of their client. But I think maybe before one would get to the point where it had gone too far, you'd want to talk to that attorney kind of in private and get to the bottom of whatever problem. I have a real similar answer to what Judge Janik gave.
Thank you.
Sorry to be boring.
Ms. Scaletta-Bremke, what reforms do you propose to increase access to justice for all?
Well, I think that a big issue is, right now, I'm a magistrate in a traffic court. A big issue is getting people to court, and sometimes that decreases access for all because we can't get litigants there to address cases. I think that a judge has to be flexible and take cases on a case-by-case basis and address the litigants as they come. And if that requires some flexibility, I think that's what needs to be had.
Thank you. Mr. Petticord, why are you running? What's your reason for running for this office?
Because it's important. It's an important job, it's a serious job. I've done this for 31, almost 32 years now. I have not shied away from a challenge in the practice of law. I think the practice is best served by people who have had a certain amount of experience and honestly a certain amount of success, taking the next step and moving into public service. I spent the first 20 years of my life in professional life in private practice because my wife and I decided that we needed to make a change for family reasons. I came out here and went to work for Dennis Will. And when I did that, I got a taste for public service that I didn't think I had. And that sort of continued over these last 10 years. And I think now that I'm capable of doing it, it's a job that needs to be done, and we need good people to run for judge, and we need good people in those seats. We have some great people now. We need more. I can do it. If I don't step up, who will? That's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Bobrowski. With the legislature now mandating party affiliations on the ballot for appellate judges, do you think the same should extend to common pleas judges?
Quite frankly, no, I do not. I firmly believe that the judicial branch should interpret the law, should apply the law as written. I do not think a party affiliation should have anything to do with that function. I think it's simply a tool to separate a political action from which fundamentally should not be a political action. The judiciary should not be something that becomes politicized. We should not be legislating from the bench. We should not be making politics part of our office. We should simply be applying the law as written and bringing the R&D designation down to the lower levels of the court system simply exacerbates an already existing problem in my view.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman. Are you a member of the local bar association, and what role do you believe judges should play with their local bar associations?
Yes, I am, and I do believe that judges should all play a significant role in the bar association. I think as a judge, it's probably, well, it's important for everyone, but I think as a judge especially, that you should play a bigger role in that, just because I think it keeps you informed, it keeps you going to meetings and, with other court personnel and other lawyers, and kind of keeps you in touch with the local bar attorneys.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey. Do you think it is appropriate for a candidate to seek endorsement from law enforcement? And if so, do you have any concern about the appearance of impartiality when deciding criminal cases?
I'm stalling. I don't know the best way to answer this, I guess. I suppose, what we're trying to balance is that notion of impartiality on the part of the judiciary. So I guess it doesn't sit well with me. But I also recognize that it's not, against the rules. So, more, I guess, maybe based upon the appearance of impropriety or in order to avoid the appearance of impropriety, probably isn't a good idea.
Thank you. Ms. Scaletta-Bremke. How would you describe your judicial temperament?
And I have judicial experience already. I've had some difficult cases. I had a litigant before me that was difficult to handle. And because I'm a magistrate, I went to the judge who the case was assigned to afterwards, and in a Lorain Municipal Court, we record everything on video. And he said to me, "Giovanna, I can't believe how calm you were." So I believe that I will be a calm judge. I hope I will be a fair judge and a judge that listens. I also recently had a client that called me to thank me for the work that I had done. And his words to me were, she was smart enough to listen. And I like to believe that in my private practice, I do listen to my clients, and I think that that's an important task of a judge as well, to listen to both sides and to remain calm.
Thank you. Mr. Petticord, what are you most proud of and least proud of in your legal career?
You know, that's a great question, and I was waiting for it, so I appreciate the heads up.
Most of you are getting it.
I appreciate the heads up, Judge Janik. I thought, sorry, I hit it first. Honestly, I'm going to go back quite a ways for what I'm most proud of. When I was a very young lawyer, I was part of a team that wasn't even a trial. It was an injunction that we had in front of Judge Bell, Sam Bell, in federal court in Akron. And we represented a group of school districts that were outside of Akron against the city of Akron when Ohio's law about children being able to change districts came into play. And it was the first reverse discrimination case that was tried in the United States, or first tried to a judge in the United States, and it brought up a significant number of issues for a lot of us to deal with. Social policy issues, legal issues. It was a case of first impression. There were lawyers on there from all over the country. And it was a lot of fun to do as a lawyer, but what it taught me was that the law can be a powerful force, and that you can do good, and that you can create social change, and you can help the society move forward within the confines of the law. That's important. Thank you. What I'm least proud of is there's a lot, but I will tell you one thing, that there's a commonality there. The times when I am least proud of myself as a lawyer is when I'm not prepared, when I don't do the job that I know I'm capable of doing. That happens. It happens to all of us. You have to get past it. Last time it happened was about 5 years ago when my son was getting ready to get married, in a case that Greg Pelch remembers that I did poorly. But that's what I'm least proud of, is not working hard enough.
Thank you.
Sorry for going over time.
Mr. Bobrowski, what qualifications do you possess that make you better qualified than your opponents?
I think largely what it comes down to is time does not always equal the level of experience you have. I've done a great variety of things in my legal practice. I started out doing both civil litigation, both as a plaintiff and as a defense lawyer. I did extensive work, both writing, going through discovery. I understand the process on that end. I've also done extensive work in criminal practice. I've never prosecuted, I've done defense work, so I have a broad base. I have the ability I've been a generalist. I've been someone who's done a lot of things in my practice of law. So when I take the bench, I would have the ability to see things from a variety of different angles. I think that's important. I think it's important the fact that I've been on the civil side, where I've worked with the courts, worked civil cases through to completion. I think it's something that takes experience, and if you've never done that from a litigant's perspective, it is a very difficult thing to manage and understand the expectations and the exigencies that come about through civil practice.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman. Your turn. What are you most proud of and least proud of in your legal career?
We all got to think about this one. You should be thinking about it all the time.
Well, what I'm most proud of is just, I think the work that I do every day. As a juvenile magistrate, I can say that I care a lot about people. And it's not just a job to me. I've always had a passion for the court system. I'm a hard worker, and every decision I make in my profession, I take a lot of time to make the decision because I care. And I care about people, I care about their families. I am proud of the fact that I treat families, every family and individual who comes before me every day, I treat with kindness and respect. And we deal with some rough families, juvenile delinquents, their families, but I treat them with kindness and respect. And even though my top priority is keeping the public safe, I care about these families. I take a lot of time to make decisions, and some people probably say, yes, she does. Some of my hearings last a long time, because I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision. We're doing very serious work that affects everybody. So that would be the thing that I'm most proud of, is just that I really think that I care about what I do and care about the families. As far as what I'm least proud of, I suppose I shouldn't say I'm unorganized, but I'm a little unorganized, but I tend to make that work. So I like to say it's unorganized chaos, but organized.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey, tell us about your trial experience and whether you're more deficient on the civil side or the criminal side and what you tend to do about that heading in onto the bench.
I've probably had considerable more trial experience on the civil end of things because I've done a lot more in the domestic relations court, doing private custodies and those kinds of things. Especially, let's back up. So I've been the treasurer of the city of Amherst for about the past 10 years. Prior to that, I did a fair amount of criminal work. It was a fair percentage of my practice, but as I became an officer of the city of Amherst, I could not accept cases where Amherst was the arresting agency. And me being the local lawyer in Amherst, if you will, it really kind of cut into the criminal part of the practice. But when I did appointed work, I was authorized to take felony ones and so forth. I think the only one, and in order to do that, you have to have a certain number of trials under your belt, jury trials as well. I think the only one I wasn't eligible to accept capital murder cases, but I could do felony 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and all of that. So I'm pretty confident in my ability to do a trial, regardless, and to manage a trial for that matter. She's about to show me the thing. I used to, for a time, I was a judge for Ohio mock trial. And that was really rewarding too. And plus it really helped as an attorney to kind of watch the kids go through the machinations, and you can kind of, use that in your own practice too.
Thank you. Mr. Bobrowski, what reforms or things can and should we be doing to increase access to justice for all?
The thing is, I firmly believe that we do have a lot of community outreach, particularly through the Lorain County Bar Association, such as the Modest Means. We do have court-appointed attorneys, but the thing is, justice for all doesn't just mean talking about the litigants. It also means hearing everyone's voices in these in cases, any kind of case. So when justice for all should include and does include like the victims in crimes, it does include the people who suffer in personal injury cases. So what we need to do is we need to continue to be very diligent in notice to all parties, making sure that parties' voices are heard, that they feel included and that they feel heard. It doesn't mean that they have to get what they want, but what it means is they have to be heard. And that we have to continue to make sure that the victims are adequately apprised of all hearings, that parties know when their hearings are, and that their voices are heard at their hearings, because if they are not, obviously they're not going to feel like they've gotten fair shake, that they're not getting justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Bremke. So I'm going to ask each of you one more question before we roll into closing comments. Is there a question I've asked any of your other candidates that you're dying to answer?
Gosh.
if not, I'll come up with one for you.
Come up with,
All right.
shoot me with a new one.
So, I know you're a member of the local bar association, but tell me what role you believe a judge should be playing with the bar association or in the bar association.
Certainly. So I have a lot of experience in the bar association. For the last 10 years, I have been a member of the bar association. That's the entire length of my legal career. I've also served on the executive board. I was actually voted by my colleagues into my position on the executive board. I currently serve as the Lorain County Bar Association president, and I serve on various committees. In the role that I'm in now as a judicial officer, I get a lot of pro se litigants. Although the general division does see pro se litigants, there's a lot of attorneys that you're dealing with, particularly on the criminal end of things. There's court-appointed counsel. Civil, a lot of times there is counsel. So I think it's important for a judge to be active in the bar association and active in the legal community, and that's something that I've spent my entire career already doing.
Thank you. Mr. Petticourt, same question. Is there anything I've asked anyone else that you are dying to answer?
Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice, all right. Do you agree with Mr. Bobrowski with respect to the legislature's mandate on party affiliations on the ballot for appellate judges as to whether that should also slide into common pleas judges?
That wouldn't have been the one I would have picked, but I'll take it. Honestly, I think that all judges' races should be nonpartisan. I think that this office is unique among offices that we are privileged to elect people to. I don't know that it matters whether you're a good Republican or you're a good Democrat or you're liberal or you're conservative. You should be a good lawyer, right? When I got into this, when I decided to get into this, two things happened that I was proud of. One was a lot of people came up to me and said, yeah, you'd be good at that. You got the time, you've done it, done the work, you're fat, you got a beard, you'd be good as a judge. That was one thing. The other thing was a bunch of people came up to me and said, are you a Democrat or a Republican? And my answer is, I'm neither, I'm a lawyer. That's what I am. The job of a trial judge in particular is not to make policy. It's not to say what should be the law. If you want to do that, run for a different office. There's a lot of choices. The job of a trial judge is to apply the law that is decided by somebody else. And in that respect, I think that the partisan affiliation actually hurts us. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey. Any dying question you'd like to answer?
I'm not dying, but I'm kind of partial to the why question, because everybody asks that.
Well, that's good, because that's the one you were going to get.
Oh, we're right here. A couple of reasons. Number one, it's a calling, really. I mean, between you, me, and the wall, nobody on this stage really wants to be up here talking to everybody right now. That's just how it goes. It's hard to do this kind of thing. This job, you have to put yourself out there. A special kind of person has to want to do it. And you're going to expose your life to the public to a large extent. And so, to a large extent, it has to be a calling. And I agree with what Mr. Petticourt's saying. You need to be a good lawyer to be a good judge. So I think that's what's motivating me. I think I'm a good lawyer. I don't want to brag or anything, but I think I'm a good lawyer. I think I'd make a good judge. I'm fair. I've got the right mentality for it. I think I'm compassionate and have those kinds of qualities. So I think that's what called me to do it.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman, same question. Is there anything you'd like to answer that I've asked somebody else and not you?
Can you list the questions again?
There'd be a lot of them, so I'm just going to ask you one.
I could answer the one about why I want to be a judge.
If that one works for you, go ahead.
Okay, so I think I've wanted to be a judge for a number of years. I think it's a natural progression for me based on all of the areas of the law that I've worked in. And it was a tough decision for me. I thought about it for a while. I've talked about it with friends and family for a long time. It was a tough decision for me, not because I didn't want to be a judge or because I don't think I'm qualified or would be good at being a judge. I'm a single mom, but I want to make it clear, my son He has a father in his life who's a wonderful father, he sees him, but when he's with me, I'm a single mom. And I do everything for my son. I'm very involved with him, very involved in his sports. And I knew that it was going to be a sacrifice, so it was something that I didn't take lightly. And I've actually discussed it with my 12-year-old son. And we've talked about it a lot, and my 12-year-old son told me, "Mom, you have to run for judge." And honestly, my 12-year-old saying, "Do it, Mom. I think you'd be a good judge." Of course, everyone's kid's gonna say that. But that's the reason for me.
Thank you. Mr. Bobrowski. You already answered the why do you want to run for judge, so you don't
Yes,
get
I
that one. Is there anyone in particular you want to answer?
I'm actually going to go back to the handling of the civil docket.
Good.
As I mentioned several times this evening, I did start my practice in civil litigation, and oftentimes as a civil litigator, you kind of felt like you were the secondary part of the docket, that you didn't always get heard, that things took forever. I think as a judge, it's incumbent upon you to be actively involved. You cannot rely simply upon your magistrate to handle your civil docket and do everything and then just, hey, this is what's going on. I firmly believe that civil litigants deserve as much attention as criminal litigants. The pain that people go through in those cases, sometimes because we can put a monetary value on it, we almost devalue it, that's not real. If you can put a monetary number, it's not real. It can be real, and I think as a judge, you have to be actively involved. You have to know your files, as Mr. Petticord stated. You have to be actively involved, triage the cases, go through the cases, work actively with your magistrate, and know what's going on. Keep those cases going so that those people, they too can have their voices heard in the court, that they don't simply get pushed aside for the next criminal case. And that's why I think you have to have an active, completely hands-on role in your civil docket.
Thank you. So that we don't have everybody here all night, we're going to move into closing remarks. And we're going to reverse the order on closing remarks, and we will start with Ms. Scaletta-Brumke. 1 minute, please.
Thank you again for the bar for having us tonight. We've heard a lot, particularly in my race, about experience, some not in Lorain County, but you all are tasked with electing a judge of the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas. So I want to talk about what I've done in Lorain County. I've had a position as a magistrate here in Lorain County. I've heard traffic cases. I've also heard civil cases as a magistrate. I've been an advocate in Lorain County. Again, both criminal and civil experience. That's important because about almost 80% of a judge's trials are criminal. It's important to have that experience. I've also served on the Lorain County Bar Association and the executive board. I've served on fee arbitration. I've served on the Bar Admissions Committee. I've served on the Women's Committee. I was chair of the Young and New Lawyer Committee. Recently, we received a grant that Jeannie and I wrote to entice new lawyers to practice and stay here in Lorain County. I have the experience here. I'm the only one in my race with both civil and criminal experience that's practiced in every court in Lorain County, and I'm the only one in my race with judicial experience. I'd ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Petticord.
I've been in Lorain County a long time. I've been practicing in Lorain County for the last 11 years, all of it in the civil division of the prosecutor's office. I have substantial experience in Lorain County courts. Even when I wasn't headquartered in Lorain County, I practiced in Lorain County courts. I've also practiced in courts in Cuyahoga County, Oglala County, California, New York, New Jersey, Texas, Minnesota. Had a great week one time where I practiced in Minnesota at the headwaters of Mississippi on a Monday, and was in New Orleans eating beignets at a case at the other end of the Mississippi later that week. One thing I've learned in all of those places is a courtroom is a courtroom, and judges are judges and litigants are litigants, and the law is the law. And what's important is the consistent application of the law. thank you very much. I look forward to earning your support for Judge in November. And I just want to say one thing. I wish my daughter were here because she's been trying to get me on a theater stage for 20 years, and she finally did it. So thank you for your time.
Ms. Freeman.
I value the Justice Center, I value the integrity of the court, I value people, and I value fairness. As I've said, and every time I say 30 years, I realize it just makes me seem really old. I've worked for the court system and only the court system my entire professional career in different areas of the court. I've got a lot of experience with visitation and custody issues. I was an assistant prosecutor for at least 15 years. I have a lot of trial experience in the criminal division as well as the children's services division. I represented children's services for a number of years. And as a magistrate, a juvenile delinquency magistrate, it's a natural progression into the common pleas adult division. What we deal with in juvenile court right now is Judge Janik said, it's not kids stealing bikes anymore. And there is some of that, but we're dealing with serious crimes. We're dealing with houses getting shot up. We're dealing with people getting shot. We're dealing with murders. And so as a common pleas judge, a lot of my juveniles will be up before me, and it's trained me well for that position. I would be very honored to be judge, and if I'm elected, I promise that every day I will vow to uphold the integrity of the court.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bobrowski, last word. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip you, Mr. Rich? I'm sorry. Man. Now I'm going to ask you another quick one. Why don't you go? You'll get last word now. Go ahead, Mr. Bobrowski.
I'm standing. It makes it easier. All right. I've throughout this evening, I've talked a lot about making people heard and feeling how people need a voice in the justice system. I think having worked as both in civil cases and in criminal cases, I built up a reservoir of empathy. But I've also tapped into that by being a magistrate and acting judge in Lorain Municipal Court. I've handled both criminal and civil trials in front of me already, albeit at the municipal court level. So I've had that first taste of being on the bench and seeing how people need to be heard. I believe that that's what I can do going forward. I would be honored if you considered me this March for this position, and I thank you for hearing me out tonight.
Thank you. My apologies, Mr. Ramsey. The floor is yours.
It's okay. We all have thick skin. We've been all doing this long enough.
We have.
Thank you, everybody, for having me. I appreciate it. I suppose the one thing that I didn't touch on about myself is with regard to experience. In addition to just being having trial experience or being an attorney for a number of years, is I've always run my own office. I've done that for a couple of decades now. That's given me experience managing people, being a boss, running the show, so to speak. I've also been a city administrator for the past 10 years, which has also given me another kind of glimpse at how to operate an office. I've had to deal with budgets. I've had to deal with the sorts of things that an elected public official has had to deal with. So I think that might translate as well. Okay. 20 seconds. How I would handle the civil docket. I would make lawyers talk before they come to court. Right? Can you not come to court at the pretrial and have your first discussion about things? Do you all have nice offices, nice phones and computers? I'll shut up.
Thank you. If I knew you were going to insult the lawyers, I would have cut you off. So everybody, let's give a round of applause to the candidate. Thank you very much.
You always check.
Next up, we have the race for the 9th District Court of Appeals. Stephen Elliott is not here with us tonight, but Judge Jennifer Hensel is and has agreed to make some comments and answer a few questions. Hello, Judge Hensel. You just go straight on. Judge Hensel, why don't you just start with a minute of opening remarks?
Thank you, and good evening, and thank you to the Lorain County Bar Association and the members of that association, and to all of you here tonight, because I think it's important to promote informed elections, and that's what this is about tonight, so I'm very happy to be here and be a part of this. I'm honored to have been one of your 5 Court of Appeals judges on the 9th District Court of Appeals since 2013. So that means that I've been twice elected so far, and that I am in my 12th year at the Court of Appeals. For several of those years, I was also elected by my fellow judges to lead and represent the Court of Appeals as both presiding and administrative judge of the Court of Appeals. Prior to becoming a judge, I had a broad base as an attorney in litigation, in representing public and private clients, and as a public servant, as a prosecutor, assistant law director. I brought all that to the bench with me when I came, and it's been a wonderful experience for me. And so thank you for the privilege to be that person.
Thank you. Judge Hensel, I know there's a lot of lawyers in this room, but there are some who are not. So would you start with, what does the Court of Appeals do?
That's an excellent question, Ben, and some lawyers don't even know that, so it's all right. The 9th District Court of Appeals judges, they have 5 judges in this district. 3 sit on every case. We hear everything that comes up from all of the trial courts, from administrative boards. We have tax appeals. We hear just about everything that everyone else hears, in addition to the fact that we have what's called original actions, things that get filed in the first instance in your Court of Appeals. So it's a heavy load, it's a heavy docket, but it's very, very important, because what the Court of Appeals does is they set the law for the district. We're that intermediate level of court. The Ohio Supreme Court is above us, and the trial courts, we did help to instruct. So when the Court of Appeals writes a decision on each case that comes before it, it takes a great deal of time and introspection and research to make sure that what we're telling the litigants in that case, what we're telling the trial court bench, and what we're maybe sometimes telling the Ohio Supreme Court or the legislature, how we feel about that particular issue before us.
Thank you. How has COVID changed the way the court operates from 5 years ago?
Yeah, you can't unring that bell. It's very interesting, because the Court of Appeals, you have, every side gets 15 minutes. Well, actually, only 2 sides get 15 minutes. And we don't see a lot of the public, so oral argument is extremely important, but much of our work is done outside of the actual courtroom. When COVID hit, we have this amazing court administrator that didn't allow us to skip a beat. We went online with our oral arguments, and we all had laptops at home, and we were not allowed to go to the office. And it was really, for the judges, was very seamless, and I hope also for the litigants, it was very seamless to move into COVID. Moving out of COVID, the interesting part about that is that some of those technologies and ideas that we had to come up with during that period of time, we're able to use so that we can serve the public the best with those technologies. We have in-person oral arguments, but we also can have an opportunity to do it via Zoom. We also record all of our oral arguments. We've been doing that for quite some time, but for COVID reasons, sometimes you might have a judge that might not be able to be with other people on the bench, and that judge can be a part of that case by listening to the oral arguments.
So remember, I didn't write these questions. There are no time limitations on courts of appeals to produce decisions. what do you feel is the appropriate length of time a Court of Appeals should take to issue a decision? And is there anything we can be doing to shorten?
That's a really good question, and that was something that frustrated me to the ends of the earth before I became a Court of Appeals judge, because it seems to take a very long time. Part of my frustration was the not really understanding how much time it takes that's not related to the judges issuing a decision, how long it might take to get it before a panel of judges. I think the 9th District, we are, by the way, the second busiest in the last decade district per judge in the state of Ohio. So our docket is heavy, and we are even above the pre-COVID numbers in terms of our docket. What can you do? You can always be accessible to your colleagues and to your colleagues' judicial attorneys to try to work these thorny legal issues out. The other thing that I do is I think I utilize my judicial attorneys very well, and so that if another judge needs a judicial attorney's assistance, I don't want to say loan, but I can have my judicial attorneys help another judge on the 9th District through some of those more difficult. It takes the team to get through these cases, and so if you want to get them out quickly, you have to work like a team. You have to work together.
Thank you. Some attorneys say that our 9th District appears to render a lot of decisions on a non-substantive basis, on either a procedural defect or otherwise. Do you agree that the court has that reputation, and is it intentional that the court first looks for a defect in the filings?
That's interesting. I don't know I can't speak to what the court's reputation is, because I don't know what their reputation is, but in terms of disposing of matters related to procedure, it's really important when you're sitting in the court of error that you're not making decisions based on things that were not brought before you, and that you're not changing the outcome for litigants by overlooking some of the things that happened in the trial court. The Court of Appeals is, for almost all cases, the court of last resort. So if we get it wrong, you generally don't have any place else you can go. And that's important, because the Supreme Court of Ohio only takes a very small number of cases. That's just the nature of that court. And so if we either overlook something that's procedural, or we create an argument for one side that they didn't actually make, then the other side would be saying, well, I didn't get a chance to respond to that argument because my opponent didn't make it in the first instance. You, court, made it. So it's important to be reserved. There's a lot of things judges want to say in the Court of Appeals, and they want to put them in the opinions. It's important to go through those opinions with a fine-tooth comb to say, is this a part of what should be coming out of this case?
Thank you. Do you regard the court's primary purpose in deciding a case as fixing an errant decision or creating precedent to guide your trial courts, or both?
I think you have to have an eye on each of those aspects of what the Court of Appeals does. We're not a court we don't set the policy for the state of Ohio. We don't have discretion on what we hear. We're simply a court of error. Was there error, and was that error prejudicial, and does it need to go someplace else in a different direction? The problem is that sometimes in many of the cases that come before the Court of Appeals, things don't make it into the record. So in terms of being precedential value for the trial courts, it's so hard when all the action is happening to get things into the record. And so we're constantly hammering, this was in the record, this wasn't in the record. We're compelled to find one way or the other. And if trial judges do a good job of helping attorneys to assist them to make sure things are on the record, but it's a really fast-paced situation down there. And so I think it's important that we do that. Number two, just briefly, in terms of giving precedent to the courts, it's never a clear-cut thing, and every case is different. So we're following the legislature or what we think the Supreme Court said. So we want to try to help the trial courts as well in that regard.
Thank you. One of the issues facing your court, as stated by candidates for the 9th District Court of Appeals at this forum in the past, is the need to attract more attorneys to accept court-appointed criminal appeals. Do you agree with this, and if so, how can that be done?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. You know, it's not just in the Court of Appeals. There's a dearth of access to justice for representation across the state. We don't probably have enough lawyers, I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with me, to handle these jobs. And it's a thankless job to take a criminal appointment on an appeal, because it's a lot of work, and it takes a long time to see, to get paid on that. And the payment isn't always commensurate with the amount of work that gets done. So it's tough. It's partially work that I think you should do as an attorney for service to your community, for service to the bar. So what can the Court of Appeals do? We can always be out there and be accessible to our bar associations, to the practicing lawyers, to try to kind of generate some income. But it's a real problem, not just in this district, but across the state.
Thank you. I wanted to get your perspective, since you actually are impacted now by the legislature adding party affiliations to the ballot, as to whether you believe that impairs the court's ability, the judiciary, to be a separate branch, or whether it's become politicized.
So I had put a lot of thought into this. I figured this was going to be a question, right? Because the Court of Appeals has those designations. And so I did a lot of research into what both sides of the spectrum were. You know, the integrity and independence of the judiciary as a separate branch of government, and the party designation in terms of transparency for who you're voting for, who supports this person. And what happened in the meantime, as I was ruminating on these things, is some litigation was filed relative to this legislative act of putting RD against on judicial candidates. And as a judge, that particular bit of legislation may come before me. And there is a canon out there that says that I cannot talk about what my opinion is on matters that may come before me as a judge. So regrettably, after all of that, I don't feel comfortable answering what my personal opinion is, because there's litigation pending now in several districts, and I may sit either as an appellate judge if it's their recusals from districts, or even if I'm called to sit again on the House Supreme Court in that regard as a Supreme Court justice. So it's unfortunate, but.
There have been, I know when I first started in practice, and again, I don't want you to comment on the reputation of the court, but there was always a belief among civil lawyers that the 9th District hated Civil Rule 56 and never saw a summary judgment that it upheld. I've noticed a bit of a change in that over the last several years, but would you just comment on how the court views summary judgment motions that have been granted in the trial court, and whether you've seen a change in that regard?
Right, so that used to be my idea too, is like, why can you never get the Court of Appeals in the 9th District to affirm any summary judgment ever? But I do think it's changed. And so over the 11 years, I think it's changed significantly, in part because there has been what I would think personally is a pretty big change in the guard. There's been, I'm the second most senior judge, and I've only been there for 11 years, so I don't know, well, I've been, it's only, but you know, that's a lot of change, and new people have new ideas. But something else happened in that regard. We used to get opinions that say summary judgment granted for the plaintiff, for the defendant, and we're a reviewing court. We don't want to make these decisions in the first instance. We do review the entire record, but we don't know what the basis was. So now, what's happened is, and I'm not saying it was a good thing to be this way before, to not affirm summary judgment grantings, but we get more meat in the decision so that we can be the reviewing court generally overall. And so I think it's a good thing, because everyone deserves a day in court, but if it is a matter of law, if they follow the summary judgment procedure under Rule 56, well, that saved quite a bit of time. As a civil lawyer, I can understand why it's especially, yes, frustrating.
So I could ask you questions for probably the next hour, but I'm not going to do that since you're here by yourself. So I will let you use your closing comments to tell this group why it is you're seeking another term in office.
Thank you. Well, I think that I have been a positive force at the 9th District Court of Appeals. And part of that I alluded to in terms of it takes a team. And your Court of Appeals just have to be able to work together. It's not groupthink. We don't all have the same ideas, obviously. You'll see that in the opinions. But it does take a level of respect and a great deal of hard work to work through all of those issues that come before us. We're lucky in the 9th District because the lawyers are so good. They bring us these thorny issues. No one is sitting back going, well, whatever. They'll probably say no. So I think I've been very receptive to that. And that's why I'm asking for another term. We have, like I indicated quite a bit, we have different faces, and I want to help to continue to guide and to work with the judges that are on the 9th District to try to keep us getting better every day that we can. I ask that you, in that regard, that you vote for me in November, and I guess on the primary, though I'm unopposed, but just get used to voting for me, and then you'll be in good shape.
Judge Hetzel, everybody. Thank you. Okay, last but not least, we have the candidates for the office of Lorain County Prosecutor, J.D. Tomlinson and Anthony Silla. Come on up. Prosecutor Tomlinson, why don't you start us off with 1 minute of opening remarks?
Sure. I'm surprised nobody here has anything better to do. But thanks for being here. Listen, just a quick biography. My name is J.D. Thomas. I'm 42 years old. I'm a lifelong Lorain County resident. I was born in Elyria, Ohio, to Dan and Marie Thomas, who are here. Thank you for being here, Mom and Dad. I won the lottery with my parents. You only have one opportunity to choose your parents. I chose really well, so I'm real proud of that. I went to Ely School in Elyria here until 5th grade. After that, my family moved out to the Firelands School District. I graduated Firelands High School in 1999. I really enjoyed it out there. The more rural setting fit me a little bit better. I eventually went to undergraduate. I graduated from Oberlin College with an economics degree in 2003. From there, I went directly to law school because I thought if I didn't, I might never go back. Some people take a little time in between law school, I didn't. So I went directly from undergraduate to graduate school, graduated law school in 2006. From that point on, basically, I put out a shingle. And as I look around, I get to see a lot of defense attorneys here. There's a few. I don't get to see you as much, but I have a lot of respect for defense attorneys. I know that job's difficult. And so it's always nice to see my fellow colleagues. I enjoyed it. Done. Done? That's it, thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I made that transition right to law school because I didn't want to get a job.
Yeah, fair enough.
Mr. Zillow, would you like to give opening remarks?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Tony Sillo. I'm running as the Republican candidate for the prosecutor's office for the November election. I am also a lifelong resident of Lorain County. I lived in Avon Lake my entire life. My parents are here. My wife of 20 years, who is from Wellington, her sister. Her sisters. I appreciate all the support. I have Graduated from Avon Lake High School. I went to Bowling Green State University for undergrad, and then I went to Case Western Reserve immediately afterwards for law school. Job-wise, I have been a lawyer for 30 years, a little bit over. I have been prosecuting for 29 of those years, and I have had a variety of roles at the prosecutor's office. I think that experience makes me the best candidate because I have the knowledge, the experience, and the ethical standards to make that office thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Silva, why don't you just stay right there? Sure. Do you favor referring criminal defendants to the diversion program? And what is your criteria if the answer is yes?
I think some defendants should be referred to the diversion program, but the criteria is important because it's written in a way that both the police, the victims, and the office automatically have a veto on that. And I think it's really important with the victims having that veto because they're the ones that were most affected. And it's something that can be misused. So I am of the opinion that while the program is important, and it is important to give some people an opportunity to get a break that deserve it, it's not something that can be used at every time on every person.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, do you see any downside to the same assistant prosecuting attorney being assigned to the criminal docket of a specific judge? I know it's been that way for years.
It has, and obviously through attrition or people leaving the office, they will change from time to time. It has changed recently. I can see the pros and cons of each side of that particular question. The one nice thing happens is when you get to know a judge, you get to know a little bit about their philosophies, and so you kind of tailor the way you practice in that particular court. However, you maybe develop a little bit too friendly of a relationship with the judges. That's possible as well. So I see that maybe you could limit eventually the time that someone stays in a particular courtroom. But like I said, with so many moving parts, it's not very often that someone stays in a courtroom for their entire duration of their practice.
Great, thank you. Mr. Silva.
Yes.
The Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office has a conviction integrity unit that involves a panel of people from different disciplines to review appropriately submitted cases. Would you, as prosecutor, be willing to start a similar program?
Yes, I am a fan of that program. They also had a separate program that they instituted when it came to death penalty cases to go through with things and to look at whether somebody would be appropriate from different disciplines. I don't think it's a poor decision to ever look backwards, especially as things change and the ability to look at DNA and to look at other things and to have the ability to have confidence in what were prior decisions. I think it can be more problematic when you are the sole decision maker. As Judge Hensel, it's really difficult that you become the actual Court of Appeals later on. So I think you have to have specific procedures to protect those safeguards as well.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, do you think it is, you heard me ask this question of others, and with the prosecutor's office, it's particularly certainly an issue with respect to seeking endorsements from law enforcement. Do you think that in those types of endorsements affect the appearance of impartiality on your office?
I think it can be argued that it does. I don't necessarily agree that it does, but it could be argued. I think that there's such a big stakeholder in what we do every day that their opinions are important. Every time this is my third election cycle now, and I've sought their endorsement every time. And every group has the opportunity for us to go in front of them and seek endorsements, and I don't see why they're any different, as long as you maintain that professional distance from them once you get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Silva, what do you believe are the most important parts of the constitutional provision and statutes involving Marcy's Law, and how do they provide impediments in the manner by which a prosecutor would do his job?
Well, I think the most important parts are that we stay in contact. We actually tried to do that when I worked with the Lorain County Prosecutor's Office long before Marcy's Law went into effect, because including those people and what's going on makes it a lot easier. Having these surprises that come up out of nowhere makes them uncomfortable. I don't really believe it's an impediment outside of, it can be difficult at times that people move around a lot to find people to get these messages out, which can delay proceedings which is difficult for the court and the other litigants and may lead to additional costs to the defendant, either through court-appointed fees or their lawyer as they come in and we are forced to ask for a continuance because you weren't able to get the notice out there. But I think it's actually a great program. I think that the victims have been very cooperative, and I haven't really seen much abuse at all in that.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, an issue that always seems to concern the public is plea bargaining. What is your position, and I don't know if you can have a position on a non-case specific basis, but what is your general position on plea bargaining cases?
It's necessary, absolutely necessary. I mean, the whole system would grind to a halt if it didn't occur. Oftentimes, after doing defense work for 15 years, no side wants to lose entirely, and so it kind of cuts down the risk that's involved in going to trial. Oftentimes, when I tried cases, they were the cases I wanted to try. It was always dangerous to try, as a defense counsel in your knows, it's always dangerous to try the cases that you're pretty sure you're going to lose. On average, defendants will receive a sentence that's about 3 times as much as if they would have pled. So you've got to be very careful in which cases you decide to plead or to try. So plea bargaining is an absolute necessity. Sometimes we don't always get the results we want, and I think sometimes it's difficult for the public because they don't get all the facts every time. So they'll see a headline and it looks bleak and it looks like maybe it was unfair or unjust, the plea bargain that we came to. But if they would have known the facts, I think they would feel differently. So a lot of times it's about informing the public about what those facts are so they can better understand why that particular plea negotiation was made, although, as you well know, that's difficult to do. But yes, it's absolutely necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Sillo, what is your plan for engaging with the community or otherwise involving the community with your office?
Well, I think the outreach program is something that's important, and that when you get out there and you explain how things are going, the office itself always has to be bigger than the person that actually occupies it. It's so easy to lose confidence in the office if things are not done correctly, and so difficult to actually get that confidence back. So I think you need to get out there. You need to be part of telling people where things are at. I think you need to do it with the police departments. I think you need to do it with the community. I think you need to talk to defense attorneys and show everybody where things are going so that it's not just a big surprise and that everybody is upset and everybody, as it was said in the last couple of presentations, nobody likes change. So you have to bring out the message and show why it's going to be important and why it's going to be better for people that we are doing things this way and why they are done that way.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, another one that always seems to be on the public's mind when it comes to the prosecutor, what are your thoughts on the death penalty?
Oh, that's a difficult question, but important. That's a difficult position, that's a difficult question in the sense that I think there's a couple different avenues for that. One is, if a violent crime was committed against my family member, I think it'd be very easy for me to say I want death. I understand those feelings. However, in the state of Ohio, no one's really being executed. And it's extremely costly. I think probably the average cost for adding a death penalty spec to a case will probably be about $1 million or so, $900,000. So it's extremely costly and it's not occurring. So the practical application is that it really isn't worthwhile in that sense until at least maybe they decide to start actually going forward with the executions. If that was the case, it might be a little bit a different answer I would have, but practically speaking, that's not occurring. Life without parole is a very difficult penalty to have as a defendant. In fact, I'm not so sure which one's worse. So the reality of it is, if I can procure a life without parole, I'd be satisfied.
Thank you. Mr. Sillo, now that marijuana is legal in Ohio, how will you deal with the expungement issues that will be facing your office if elected?
Well, I think there's only one way you can deal with the expungement issues. It's what's legally able to be expunged. It's a constant changing and moving target, and if they're going to make those things expungible and people have lived their lives in a law-abiding fashion afterwards, then I think it's reasonable to have those things expunged. What you can't do as a prosecutor is decide that you don't like something not being expungible and expunge it anyway. That becomes a problem later on because your oath, much like the death penalty, is to actually follow the law and to do what it is whether you like it or not. It's a real danger when the prosecutor decides what laws are going to be enforced or not. They become the legislature at that point. They become part of the judge because the court doesn't get the opportunity to do things, and they're the prosecutor. Nobody should wield that much power.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, how do you think investigations involving locally elected officials or law enforcement should be handled at the county level?
Could you restate the question?
Sure. How do you think, and I didn't write it,
That was probably clear.
how do you think investigations involving locally elected officials or law enforcement should be handled for the county?
Well, obviously, you should get a law enforcement agency that's not involved in the original conduct. That's always important. So anytime that has occurred within our office, we usually make sure that it's referred to an agency that is objective in the way that they look at it. I feel as if the times that those have occurred in the office so far, we've done a pretty good job of making sure that the investigation has been objective and done so by an objective third party.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Sillo, do you see any downside to the same assistant prosecuting attorney being assigned to the criminal docket of a specific judge?
I do think they should move. I think because people become too comfortable. I think that it stunts the growth of those prosecutors because they're not learning how to adapt in other judges' courtrooms. And I'm not saying you move every 6 months, but every couple of years, I was always of the belief that you moved on and you became a better lawyer because certain judges are comfortable with certain arguments and you have to learn other arguments to make yourself a better lawyer because eventually some of those judges either age out or decide not to run again or they run for the Court of Appeals and you've stunted the growth of that prosecutor because he's just used to one thing going on.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, do you favor referring criminal defendants to the diversion program? And what is your criteria if the answer is yes?
I do. I'd like to. You gotta go after the people that are dangerous, but give those people that have a second opportunity that opportunity. As Attorney Sillo stated, there's certain criteria for getting into the program, which you mentioned, but we've been pretty successful in opening up that program a little bit. For example, our office has increased the diversion or the amount of people in the diversion program by almost 200% from the previous administration. What's occurred? Well, we've doubled the amount of restitution given to victims of crime. So if individuals that have lost money, for example, we've doubled the amount. And I'm proud to say that the individuals that we've placed into that program, there has been a 0% felony recidivism rate, which means we are choosing the right individuals to go into that program. So I believe in second chances, and I think that the increase in diversion program and those people that are subject to it shows it.
Thank you.
That can be extremely effective and keep people out of the system that maybe have a chance at redeeming themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Sillo, question I asked Mr. Tomlinson, what is your position on plea bargaining cases?
Plea bargaining is going to be more of the exception than the rule. When I was chief of the criminal division from 2005 through 2012, for 12 years to 2017, our plea statistics were at 85%. Currently, with the regime we have there now, they're at 54%. And the reason I say it has to be the exception, not the rule, is because, one, you're either not indicting things right. If you're over-indicting to get a plea, that, I don't believe, is ethical. That is a model that Cuyahoga County was always accused of using. And I think you should indict people with what they actually do and not just go higher. And if you're losing that many witnesses and unable to actually prosecute almost half your cases as they're indicted, that is a problem. Because looking at the statistics over those same years, it's the same amount of trials. And the trials are being lost instead of won. So I think when you plea bargain too many cases, what you're doing is giving away your good cases and resulting in trying your bad cases. So I think it's necessary and it should be used in times when you actually are getting something out of it, whether it's somebody's a cooperating witness, or if there's an evidentiary problem, or if you get evidence back that changes things, sure, you should plea bargain. But when somebody's done something and you've charged them appropriately, I think you go through with it. If there's something that they deserve based upon what you find out in the case, that's more of a sentence bargain.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, what is your plan for engaging with the community, and how have you done that during your terms in office to making the community feel more engaged?
Well, we've done that. Even located in my room now are several of my investigators. We have about 5 investigators, and we engage the community on a regular basis. These individuals give up their personal time to get out there and engage. So far, we have an child identification program, and we've handed out 3,000 child identification cards for 3,000 children, which tells their height, weight, hair color, other identifying information. That way, if something happens and they're lost, or God forbid someone's taken them, the family has the ability to give that right to the law enforcement with the most accurate information. I pride myself on being part of the community. On my weekends, I'm out and about. And so my investigators and I, on a routine basis, we're out there with the community answering questions. Even now, I walk door to door 5 or 6 hours each day on the weekend, make myself available to the people that are voters, and make myself available for any questions that they have. And sometimes they have very interesting questions. Sometimes some criticism, which I always welcome too. So I think I've shown that I actually do that, and my investigators are a big part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sillo, what are your thoughts on the death penalty?
Well, it is the law of the state of Ohio, and I think the oath that we take as prosecutors is to enforce the laws of the state of Ohio. It's not up to us to decide what the law is, so I think it needs to be applied. It needs to be applied evenly, and that's why I talked about what Cuyahoga County model is with defense attorneys and everybody else and going through things to try not to waste the money on death penalty cases that have little effect at the mitigation phase. But to say that because it's not being applied right now, we're not going to seek it in cases, well then if it becomes to get applied again, then those people escaped it because we didn't enforce the law and we violated our oath as prosecutors by not doing our duty.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, there seems to have been a higher than normal turnover in the prosecutor's office in recent years. How do you plan to address any problems with staff retention?
Well, what's happened recently, especially with new elections, with the new election cycle, you oftentimes lose very talented people to new positions that have opened up because someone's been elected to an office. What we find is that the majority of people that move to other offices is because of money. It's very tough to do. It's very difficult to compete with Cuyahoga County, for example, where someone can make $10,000, $20,000 more than you make now. What we've done recently to try to stem that is we've tried to increase wages. So now we were given a 3% increase in wages from the commissioners, and we were able to find some savings. We were able to add another 4%. So this past year, or this next coming year, we're going to allow a 7% increase in wages. And we think that'll stem a little bit of that turnover. But that's always an issue, especially when you have an office of 100 people. But we've had some people return as well, where they thought they were going to maybe seek a little bit more satisfaction somewhere else, and they've decided to return. So it's good. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sillo, if elected, how do you intend to pick and then retain your staff?
Well, one of the ways I intend to retain the staff that's there is I worked there 27 years, and I had a lot of ideas that even though I worked under 5 different prosecutors. One of the ways is I think you need to meet with people and find out what their passion is and where they want to go. Because it's my belief that people do better in a job that they actually want to do, and they're not just pigeonholed into another job. For instance, juvenile has just become a glut of where you're stopping people, and that's where people used to move up to get into the criminal division and receive the training. Ms. Freeman, she came from that section, and as Judge Glass, Mike Kinlan, and that's not happening anymore. As for money, right now it seems like the investigators are receiving a much larger portion than the actual trial prosecutors and are chiefs of everything at this point, which I don't believe is good to go through. And lastly, I've worked all over the state when I worked for the AG's office, and I believe you have to have a presence at the Ohio Prosecutors Attorneys Association so that you can make those networks and you can get people to actually come to work with you and be comfortable with that model. And that's just not being done. The office at this point has absolutely no presence. I probably went to 30 different counties and they didn't even know who he was. And I think that is a danger and stops you from attracting people. So those things are what I would be looking at doing.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, your office was recently criticized by the Elyria Chronicle for a lack of transparency with respect to the settlement of a former employee's claim. How do you respond to the Chronicle's criticism of a lack of transparency in the resolution of a claim against a public office using public funds?
Yeah, what occurred in that particular matter is, like I said, we have an office of almost 100 people. And when you have that many people, you're going to have conflict that occurs between employees. This particular matter was a civil rights complaint that was levied against one employee against another. And as you well know, when there's two sides to a story, each side feels as if they're correct and that they handled the matter accurately and ethically. Each side believed that they were doing the right thing. However, litigation is expensive. And so what we decided to do is, once we received an offer from the other side regarding that matter, and I was advised by certain lawyers in the office that the offer that was made was less than if we were to continue through the litigation, you have to make a decision, and that's the decision we made. That decision was endorsed and voted unanimously by the Board of Commissioners, who understood the matter. And so public records have come out, and those records have been distributed. And so it's not a matter that was concealed. It's a matter that those documents are available through public records requests.
Thank you.
There's a question I'd like to answer.
Fine, I'm sure you would. It's not the one you're going to get, though. Mr. Cello, you've got your closing remarks for that. Mr. Cello, you've made it known that you disagree with Prosecutor Tomlinson's dismissal of the Nancy Smith and Joseph Allen cases, even though the community overwhelmingly supported that decision. Why do you think you're correct with your belief that it was not the right thing to do?
No, that was not my disagreement. My disagreement was with a misstatement of the law by the prosecutor at this point. He was applying, saying that there were Brady violations, and the danger was there were 7 reviewing courts that had looked at the evidence, saying that there were not Brady violations. And as I said before, it's a danger to allow somebody to come in and decide they're going to be a reviewing court. If you would have looked at it, and to be clear, I didn't even work in that office when that case was tried. That was in 1993 and 1994. I started in 95. I dealt with the case only once, and it was with Lee Sinclair. I asked for the record to actually be corrected because of this, and went in front of Judge Cook at that point, who called Judge Lee Sinclair, who was handling it at that time, and that was what he was willing to do. I dealt with getting her out of prison, and he would not move on the other defendant at that point. Those things all got put onto the record. Judge Cook put on the record he talked to Lee Sinclair, and those things are all accurate. In fact, if you want to ask somebody, go ask Mayor Bradley. He was the one that gave me credit for getting her out of prison on Dateline, which upset then Judge Burge to no end.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, that's the end of my formal questions at this point.
Yes.
I'm going to allow you to have a minute of closing, and we'll reverse the order this time. Mr. Sillo, would you like to go first and make a 1-minute closing remark?
Sure. My closing remark is going to be around the $100,000. The question is why did you spend the extra $50,000? Because the Corsa insurance would have only been $50,000, but he paid $100,000. They insisted on an NDA. This is public monies, and public has the right to know. I have looked at the documents they said. It doesn't say whose behavior, what was done, or why it was done. There's been nobody disciplined for this, and you have no reason to be hiding these things. It is directly out of the AG Sunshine Law that you cannot even put an NDA in a public contract. And they did not have the commissioners vote on it. They requisitioned money, and that was it. They turned money from a payroll account, and somehow they had an extra $100,000, and they requisitioned it to a services account they didn't tell anybody it was about. That settlement agreement says one thing: informal allegations for $100,000. That is wrong, that is not transparency, and those things cannot stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson, would you close us out?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to take the time to talk about my accomplishments. Crime is down in Lorain County. The methods that we're using is working. There's been double-digit decreases in violent street crime in the major cities around this county. That is a fact. Crime is reducing in all of the county. There's been a 12% increase in the successful prosecution of high-level felonies since we've taken over, and a 26% increase in the prosecution of sex offenses. We've brought money into the county from federal sources, almost $500,000. That's never been done before in this office. Never. $500,000. And that money is being used for crimes against children and crimes against women. Human trafficking. We've successfully prosecuted the first human trafficking case, and we got the defendant 187 years. When we took office, there was 150 secret indictments that were never addressed. 150 victims that never got justice. We have remedied that. That has been done as well. We've vastly improved the relationships between this office and local law enforcement, which when I took office was the worst it had ever been because they didn't respect what the police officers had to say. That has been remedied. The police now have a voice in what occurs in this office now, and I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the accomplishments. Our method is working. When crime is going down, that means we're doing something right. I'm extremely proud of our accomplishments. Extremely proud. Excuse me?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
I think you've wrapped up.
That's it. It's a wrap.
All right, everybody, our candidates for Lorain County prosecutors, Mr. Tomlinson and Mr. Sillo, thank you very much. And with that, I appreciate it. That wraps up our candidates' night. Thank you, everybody, for coming out in less than ideal weather. Thank you, and best of luck to all of our candidates.